So, super welcome, Mary Diamond, here in this Micro Society Network talk. I'm so happy to be able to welcome you. And for the people who probably have seen you in The Secret, and I think a lot of people know you from this movie, or maybe have had trainings from you. And today we're going to talk about micro societies, the building of a new world, new societies, new villages, new cities, because that's very needed for the society of tomorrow. A lot of people are longing for that, longing to live in new communities, healthy communities where you have a new approach for energy, a new approach for architecture, a new approach for education, holistic education, also agriculture. And we have this is now in this collective field of humanity that we're longing for, to build together a new world. And I'm so curious, what is for you important from your background, because you're a Feng Shui expert and you coached many people in that, and you went to many places and gave advice how to build or redesign the environment. So what are your insights about that?
Well, thank you, first of all, Briony, for inviting me to this amazing project, and to share a little bit how, from an environmental perspective, what is necessary for a micro society or micro villages or micro cities, where, I would say not only sustainable living, but healthy living and spiritual living can happen, and harmony can be occurring. And of course, as a Feng Shui master and a dowsing master for the last almost 30 years, I have supported many houses, but also I have supported many, I would say, communities to build a perfect way to be in harmony. If that's a real estate development of 100 people, or villages, or hotels with a lot of properties on it. So what is important in all of this? So first of all, I want to explain a bit about Feng Shui. So Feng Shui is an energy system for the last 4,500 years that have been created by the Chinese. And I always say that the Feng Shui masters from the beginning were shamans, because they were in tune with nature. Like when we look at the shamans that were connected with the rainforest, not that there was rainforest in China, but there were lakes and seas and mountains and valleys. And so there were people that were in tune with the energy of the land. I think that is, first of all, what Feng Shui was about. And then over the thousands of years, they started understanding there were principles in place. There were certain things that they could rearrange. But the first thing for them was making sure that wherever you were living, that you are in harmony with nature. That was the first thing. And that you also would understand that the landscape around you will affect you because of the wind, because of the water. So there were always 5 elements that were needed. That's what they have seen. So there was the element of wind, of course, that we have naturally. I mean, that's what the earth provides. And we have the element earth itself. These are 2 elements that are present. And then we also have the element of fire, and that is the sun, right? So, we have also the element of the landscape, wood, as the plants, the nature, that is around us, the trees. And then we also have the element of water, what is very important. So they saw that these are 5 elements that people need to have, but not too much of it and not too less, just like a perfect balance of it. Let's say you would be in an open space where the sun is shining on you, that is like 40, 50 degrees Celsius per day, then you would start getting a desert. That's too much. But if you would have a 20, 30 degrees Celsius, that would be a perfect, right? That's why people go on holidays where it's like 25 to 30 degrees. That's always is a perfect balance, right? People always want to be close to water, right? But water, what is that? That would be the sea, that would be a lake, that would be a river. But if you would be living on a waterfall, that would be too much water. Yeah. So it's always the balance of water that balances you out, that calms you, that gives you a feeling of well-being, right? And then we don't want too much wind either. So that's why, the Chinese would believe that there needs to be hills or mountains to calm down the wind, because if it's a flat land, and we both have lived in a flat land in the same country in Belgium. If it's a flat land, the wind comes in and it's so cold, right? So you need some protection of the hills around you to calm the winds, to not have too much a cold wind, but the warmer winds, the winds that in the northern hemisphere, for example, come from the south and the west. And so we also need landscape around us, right? We need green, we need trees, we need flowers, because then we also have the animal kingdom that comes in. And then we definitely also need the earth needs to be healthy. Yeah. So you need soil that is healthy, where you can grow your crops on. So you need also that in consideration. These are the 5 first elements that I would say the Feng Shui masters or shamans start looking for to find an ideal place to build something. Yeah. And then, of course, later on, they have seen that the compass directions are also supporting you. If you're sleeping or sitting, or your home is a certain direction, that you will have a better energy field around you. But the original Feng Shui masters were not just looking alone on the landscape, and if all these 5 elements were present to create a sustainable living, but also a healthy and harmonious living. They would always look at the energy points of the house itself. Yeah. And so that is literally what, the Druids were talking about in, the times of England, right? In the Roman times, they were looking for ley lines, where in China, they were looking for dragon lines. That's what they call them. So, or the Egyptians would look for this energy spots where there was a high energy. Some people would call them meridians of the world. And I would say that over all the elders and the shamans always had known that there were places that were more uplifting, for you than other places. And so that system, that energy system, is connected with dowsing. And people would douse literally to find where is the best place to have the wells. So they would look for wells. Yeah. If you have a natural well in the property, that's always a good thing. But you also would see that if there's a well, there also would be a positive energy. Yeah. Not just because there's water, but because there is a positive energy coming out of the earth, and around the well would always life would thrive. Like, think about in Italy, for example, every village, or in France, the villages have their own fountain. Yeah. But the fountain was always based around literally the source, the well of a town. And then life would be created around it. Yeah. So when we look at this, so there are certain things that we can look for to find the highest frequency in a place, in a landscape. And one of the things I studied when I was doing Feng Shui with my grandmaster was I studied specifically city Feng Shui, like how to set up cities, how to set up villages. And when you look through history, is that a fountain, right, or that is built on a source, or there is a source where water wells up, that always the most wealthy people would live close to the source, because they don't want to be far from the source, because they need the water. And people that were poor, or people that were not accepted so much by society, they would live further away, and they have to walk further to the source. And sometimes, take an amount of time during their day to get the water, what we still see in Africa, right? So that people sometimes walk for hours. And then when, in Africa, when they built, they find the sources and they build wells there and pumps where the people get water, that the moment they find good sources, that then everything starts thriving around it. Education, because they don't have to spend hours anymore to get to the water, the children. So education, there's an increase of prosperity, because there is a good source of water. And so I think that's one of the first things I would look for, to make sure there is a good place of water, and good water, not just any water, but just good water with a lot of oxygen. That is something that you always need to have. And you can say, well, we can bring it in through tubes from somewhere else, but if it's a micro society, you don't want to depend on other places, right? So water is a very crucial element.
And nowadays you can also scan it. You have these satellite scans. You can find the water sources and the water flows. So
correct. So yeah, you don't need to douse it anymore, but still, there is the more advanced technology now for that, for sure. But that's very crucial, to have really good water, and because Feng Shui means wind and water, and then making sure there's a good wind energy, and for sure, if you want to be sustainable, you need to have positive wind flow to get wind technology working and creating electricity. So it's really interesting. If you think about Feng Shui is wind and water, and still today we always know we need water and we need wind to create a sustainable, good living, right, for a long time. So I just want to compare that, like what was then necessary and what is still necessary today. And it always fascinates me to see how history, right, has been showing that this masters of the environment were right on. Yeah. But of course, there is, when we look at city Feng Shui or a village Feng Shui, we need to have a center. Very important is when you have a center where, if that's a source or if that's an open space where there's a gathering space is so necessary, right?
Like the market in the past.
A market in the past, yes. What was always interesting enough, always built around a well, was also always the dowser would look for the most positive place, and we would call that a positive vortex, and then they would put a well there, or if they found this positive place, they would put images of the heroes on it, or they would put the Mary on it, or they would put a castle on it, or it would be like a town that you and I know, Bruges, or in Courtrai, they would put a Belfort on it, like they would put a tower on it. So they would make that energy stronger, yeah? And so, but then people would gather there because it has such a positive energy. And again, the marketplaces would be, the merchants would come to that place. Yeah. So having an open space, very interesting, an open space in the center of your community always brings the community together. Yeah. So for example, in New York, you don't have a marketplace, but you have, the park. Yeah. You have a place where everybody comes together, the green lung of New York. So places where there is no central space, like Central Park, that's literally central, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't have a central place in a community, the community doesn't thrive so well, and there's more disharmony that is created. Yeah. So you need to have a central place that is open. Even in the old palaces in China, they would always make sure that the palace was built as a square, and in the middle was a void. Yeah, even the Greek villas were set up this way, that there was a square, and the people would sleep in the square or they're having their dining room, whatever. But the middle was a garden. The middle was something where they could gather. Yeah, so that is, I mean, it's a simple thing, but it's very important. Have a center for your place. Yeah. And so where people can come together and I would say, not just to talk, to share their information, to share their merchants, but also to celebrate. Yeah. Because I think that's one of the things that is necessary in society, is also to celebrate. Yeah. Because right now people would go into, I don't know, nightclubs to celebrate, but actually in the ancient time they would celebrate on the markets. Yeah. Because it's in open air. So the joy would spread from that open air into all areas of society. And then if we look at, we also look at, there are 8 directions, 8 compass directions, and the center is the 9th. So the center we talked about, and that means that there are 8 compass directions. And so that means every compass direction is connected with an element of society. Yeah. So the first one is that in a micro society, there has to be a place for the professional field. Yeah. For people that work on their career, that do business. So in that micro society, there has to be space for the people that do business, that want to create a career. There must be a space connected with money. Yeah. So the financial aspects. There must be a space created for government. Yeah. The people that lead. Yeah. The society, if that's a parliament, if that is the elders, whatever that is, there must be a place for that. There must be a place for healers. Yeah. And interesting enough, government and healers is connected. If there are good leaders, there will be good healing. Yeah. So healers and government needs to be present. There needs to be a place for the women. Very interesting. Yeah. And for the women, that means the mothers, the grandmothers, the daughters, that they can come together. Because if women are thriving and they have their own space, they will benefit everything. We also need a space for creativity and for the children. Yeah, because children are the creative ones. Yeah. So we need a space for the children, and we also need space for the fathers and the men to come separately together. Because not that they can not come together, men and women, but they come together central, in the central place. Yeah. But they need separate places according to the ancient Feng Shui masters. And we also need a place for celebration, but a place in the sense of celebration for people that do theater, that are singing, that are dedicating themselves to the arts. Yeah. And there also needs to be a place for spirituality or religion or philosophers. Yeah. So these are like the 9 areas, the 8 areas around the central space. All these have to have a place. And if you look at society right now, you sometimes see that it's present in a city, but it's not specifically dedicated. Yeah. So in a micro society, these areas need to be dedicated. And of course, we can go based on the compass directions, because every compass direction is connected with something. Like the children, the west, the philosophers, the religion, spirituality is northeast. Then the ones that are advising and government can be in the northwest. Healing is in the east. So bankers, financial will be the southeast. Mothers would go southwest. So having the arts, yeah, that would be in the south. So actually you can set up your whole micro society, placing all the right gathering elements in the right area. And it's really interesting because that was used for thousands of years. And I have seen, it's very interesting, I've seen and studied a lot of the city histories, yeah, that the people that were creatives, yeah, they would always go and move to the west side of the city, and that more the people about the healers or the people that needed healing. So they were perhaps not the healers, but the people that needed healing, the people that were the most suffering, they would go to the east side. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. And that more everything about I would say the arts would go more to the south, and more the professions, the people that were the lawyers and the doctors, and the people, not so much the doctors, but like the surgeons, actually. The doctors would go more to the east, but the surgeons and people that really were on a high level of society already, they would all go to the north. Yeah, so it's really, really interesting. And even in today's major cities, you still have that. Yeah, that these things are set up this way, and it's because there's like a law of attraction somehow. Like these compass directions attract this energy, and I'm talking now specifically about the northern hemisphere. Because in the south it flips around a little bit. So because the wind is a little bit different there, and the sun comes differently up, and you know, it's different vibration, and the water flows a little bit differently. So it's a little bit different energy, but it's quite interesting to see that you can actually set up a micro society based on Feng Shui that works for everybody. And then, of course, if everybody then has their own house, they can set up their home based on their personal vibration. Based on your birthday, you have a different law of attraction in your home, different homes that work for you. You can actually set up the whole inside of the house with the colors, with the images that is totally based on really good Feng Shui for 20 years. So we have 20-year cycles, literally. Yeah. And it's quite interesting when you talk about micro society, because we're getting into a new cycle. So in 2024, we're getting into a cycle for in the next 20 years till 2044. And it's a cycle of 9. And the cycle of 9 is all about completion. So everything we have learned in the 160 years before, and that is actually something we are now have to complete and bring ready for the next 180-year cycle, because we're thinking in Feng Shui in cycles of 180 and 20. So 9 times 20, again, the number 9. And so we need to like learn to use the best of everything we have learned to create something new. And then from there, we are able to do that. Then we will be able, as a whole society, to get into a new 180-year cycle. So I think the micro societies are like, in the next 20 years, if some can be implemented, then, and we see that works, then we can create it in a macro society, you know, everybody's benefiting from it.
Yeah, I agree. That was also the plan. It's nice that how you are describing it, because I can feel that where we were building on, like making the business plans and the plans and which units, we forgot a few units. if I listen to you, we didn't have yet the woman's side and the man's side. We already had a lot of what you were describing was in one way or another already in our business concept. Because for us, because I was an educator in the past and I had a school in the past, what my origin for creating these micro societies was that I was noticing, oh my God, schools, you know, it's so hard to be a director, and it's such a hard job because you're not supported by the whole community. You just have to, you're just working in the rat race, and you're just trying to hold up with all the government regulations and so on. So, and I wanted to really start a holistic school. So, and then I was thinking, oh, but would it not be better that we have a whole village supporting the school? So what do we then need? And it started from creating first the business plan for the education center, the school. And then we thought, oh, maybe, but we need a clinic. So let's create a plan for a vitality clinic. And then, but the farming, we need our own food. So a regenerative farming unit is important. And then we also need, and so step by step, it became a bigger and bigger village, which we could submit for funds and for funding. And but I think it's beautiful how you are bringing these new elements in, and how to arrange it in a certain way that chi energy is flowing well and through it, that it is also regenerative in just by being there. Yeah,
correct. So it's very interesting what you're saying. That is that, you know, we say in business sometimes location is everything, right? So like having a restaurant or a hotel or a business in the right location brings you the right clients. Yeah. So if you have a high-end, I don't know, fashion shop, you want to be in a address where there's a lot of high-end clients passing by. Otherwise, it will not give you the clients, right? But it's more than that. It's literally the magnetic fields of the compass direction will actually stimulate the being of that of these kind of people in that area. Yeah. And then if you not just in that area would just be, but you will then use the right elements, the right colors. For example, for the West, like the West needs earth elements, and so the children need earth and they need metal, but they need colors of whites, and they need yellows and oranges and peach, and but placing there like reds would actually make the children too excited and start fighting more. Like I was recently working on a nursery, and they were saying that they had repainted several things, and since that they had repainted it, they had much more kids that were upset and wouldn't calm down and would fight. And so they show me around, and they had put everywhere red. Yeah. So red stands for fire. So you cannot do red in that. But so I asked them to bring things as oranges and earth tones and, silvers and whites. And immediately they start seeing the children just calming down. Yeah. But if you go to the arts, yeah, and you do go to a movie, you would have a red carpet. So everything about music and passion and celebration, you want red, right? Because that's, hey, we're firing up ourselves, right? So there you don't want the earth tones. So that is actually based on what you will place somewhere. You would then have a dominant aspect of colors, but also dominant element of elements that work. And we always have a basic element and a supporting element for different areas. And we also have literally certain images that can be placed there, certain literally even gemstones. You can work with certain aromas that work in that field better than in others. You would, for the children, like to give them a lot of vanilla and cookies smell, because then they feel at home. Yeah, right. But if you do vanilla and cookies where the business people are, well, literally they will become lazy, right? They will be like relaxed, right? There you want peppermint, and you want Mandarin that just gives focus in your minds. Yeah. So you actually can work with the colors, the images, but also the smells, literally, right? And around it. And so there's like a very advanced level that you can look into that. And of course, based on time when you build locations, there are certain areas that are better, that you want to activate a little bit more. But there's a lot that can be done with Feng Shui on a bigger scale of a community, and then per home. Yeah. So when I studied, city Feng Shui, I remember when we were studying that. I mean, I think there was only a few students that wanted to do that because they were only thinking about their home. But I was like thinking, yeah, but hey, if I have a bigger scale, right, I can do that. I can help them. And I have seen, if you do the fountains in the right place, if you do the arts in the right place, if you do even the pathways, or the how the entrance of the community looks like, how the streets are in that community, it actually will give more balance and more harmony. If you have in a, for example, a society, you have all straight streets, like literally straight, like a grid, you actually activate violence in that place. Okay. Yeah, very interesting. So in Feng Shui, it's all about movement.
So like North America, if you come down with the planes, it's just, I'm like always amazed. Like here, when you go down, it's not like Europe where you have like this spider web of roads. Correct. But here in North America, it's like square. It's like you get somebody just lined it up.
They did. Actually, they did. They made the grid north, south, east, west. Yeah, but they did it so exactly that the most of the houses are exactly due north to east to west to south. So when houses are in that exact due, like 0 degrees, 90, 270, 180 degrees, people start having health issues, wealth issues, and relationship issues. Yeah. So, but for example, in LA, you come into LA, I'm there a lot. So I come into LA and you see the grid. But if you go to Beverly Hills and you go to the Hollywood Hills, right, or you go to Santa Monica, right, in the hills, they all are winding. And that's where the wealthy people live, right? So the people that have less money, they live literally where the grid is. Yeah. And so everything is like with Tai Chi. If you do a Tai Chi, you don't do Tai Chi like this, like a robot, right? It's all straight. It's all about movement. Yeah. So Feng Shui is like Tai Chi of the house. It's finding the Tao, the Qi of the Tao, the Qi of the way, the Qi following the flow of the Qi, not just for the body, but for the home. And not only for the home, but also for the community. So if you have straight streets, then literally people will start being quicker upset with each other. They will start comparing each other, criticizing each other faster. So there becomes like a disharmony, because everything that is straight is considered sha qi. That means not positive qi. Yeah. So, but everything that's movement. Think about dancing, right? We don't dance like this. I mean, some people love to dance like this, but to be honest, that's not such a great view, right? So, but people are like a waltz, for example, like you're waltzing, and you can go on for hours when it's waltzing, because it's the movement of qi, right? And so if your streets are like this, yeah, you actually will have more harmony between the people. Yeah. So it's all these little things, but it's just
what would you say about, because we are very much in favor of really biomimic architecture, where you have the round forms and where everything is more like nature forms. What is your feeling about the forms of the architecture?
Well, it's really interesting. We are not so much for round forms of a house or for or rooms, yeah, because we always want to adapt all the 9 compass directions. Think about the oval chamber in the White House, yeah. The oval chamber actually is missing 4 corners, yeah, because in every room you can look at the 9 corners, so the 8 compass directions and the center. So the oval chamber is missing the southwest area. So it means it's very difficult for women to become president, first of all. Yeah. So they're missing the southeast. That means they're missing finances. And I think the country in the world that has the most debt, financial debt, is America, right? So if you look at these, the corners they're missing. So when you do for houses, we always look for square or rectangular, but full square, not U shapes, L shapes, not round, because you're always missing something. And in that house, then somebody will be missing their personal energy. And so for some people, it will be positive because they're getting their numbers right and their vibrations right. But for others, you will be missing something. So in that sense, it's we're not in favor of that. Yeah. Okay. But we do work with rounds and ovals in the house. So like think about the shape of your sofa or a dining room table. It's better to round or to oval. If we have a mirror, it's better to have a round mirror. So there are shapes in the house that we can do, but not as the building. Yeah, you will always have people missing their energy if you do something round.
Okay. And if you then, like you say, it's based on your specific numbers, how you will design the house. But of course, you're sometimes with 5 people in the house. Do you then do an average, or how do you calculate it?
Well, you always go, first of all, with let's say it's a family, you will always go for the person that brings in the most chi from the outside. So that's a major decision maker. And that is the one that makes the most income. Yeah, but definitely the parents. Yeah. So we always would look at for the parents, the front door would be good, the bedroom would be in a good direction. And then for the children, you will look at their own bedroom. Yeah, because children don't bring chi in yet. Yeah, they are chi themselves because they have energy themselves, but they don't bring financial chi in, right? So we always look at that perspective. And then, of course, if people want to know, they, even now for their own home, they can actually go to my website, marydiamond.com. They can download my free app and finding out what are their best directions for them and how to look at this, because everybody has a success direction, a health, a relationship, a wisdom direction in your house. But if you have like a round house, and I remember I had this man, and he had his building was set up as a cone. Yeah. So the basic was round, and then the rest was a cone. And he was actually missing in the cone his 4 best directions. Yeah. So he started really suffering. Yeah. Because he was just missing what was good for him. Yeah. So therefore, we always say if you do square or rectangular, everybody will have something in the house that works for them. Yeah. And they will thrive better as a family, to be honest. Okay. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And I just wanted to ask you, I suppose that people now want to know more, how is my house built and how is my room? Yeah. So, but you already answered that question that on your website, Mary Diamond.
So they can go to download a free ebook, but they also have a free app. They just put in Mary Diamond energy number, and then they put in their energy number, and literally then they will get, they have to put in their birthday and their birth gender, and they will get their energy number, like I'm number 5, yeah? And it will give what are your directions, yeah? So your best directions will be shown. Okay. And then it will also give you a compass, yeah? Based on your compass, there will be directions that are good for you, like Southwest is my success direction, relationship is my West. So, for example, I go more to the West Coast than to the East Coast for my business, right? Because that's where, it's stronger for me. But then you also have several videos in your energy number where you can start, clicking on the videos with some free information, how to start setting up your house for success. And then if you want to continue, you can download the premium version, and you can actually set up your whole home based on this app. So that will be very helpful.
Congratulations. Yeah, I don't know how long you already have it, but it sounds great.
Yeah, so we just updated it so that it's really, and there's a lot of meditations on it, because every based on your birthday, you can actually activate your home differently. Yeah. And also do specific meditations that are just for you.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Great. I'm already excited. I'm going to download it. I'm checking our house too. But I think it's great information. And I'm sure we love to have you involved in the process of the building of those micro societies too. And for the people who are listening and who are saying, yeah, I want to be part of it, we also have a micro society network newsletter. So you can subscribe for that newsletter. You will have the link for that. And you will be informed about all the progress we're making and where you can collaborate in. So it's very exciting times. I feel myself like, in Europe, we have St. Nicholas, who is coming in December with his gifts, and I'm now like feeling like a little girl who's waiting on all the gifts and sometimes a bit impatient. But at the same time, yeah, so many blessings are happening, so many great things, and so many people want to co-create and collaborate. So I think it's something which is really needed for the collective of humanity. Yes. And what it will become, it will be a co-creation of us all together. How all those micro-society will look like. I'm also sure that, like you already said, dependent on the hemisphere, dependent if you're in the north or the south, it will look different. And it will be look different because of the creativity of the people who are living in a certain society. They will give their life energy. I mean that the life energy will interact and will create something, creative for that place, and together with the nature elements. Because of course we always think we buy land, but we are not the only owners of that land. There's quite some elements.
We are just stewards. We're just really temporary stewards of the land. We always think that's the illusion as human beings, that we own a land, right? But we are not, because we don't live for thousands of years, right? So we are just temporary stewards of land. It belongs to the earth itself, and it belongs to the universe. And if we just would be knowing what we can contribute to the land, and you can start in on your own space, yeah, because you can actually uplift your energy in your own space already, and then knowing that you can help others with this, right? It starts always with you, right? And then you can have a ripple effect. But then if you have a society of people that are, vibrating on a similar level, right? And you have an environment that supports all of them, because that's one of the things I've been telling for the last almost 30 years, is that, as you said, some people know me from The Secret, but the law of attraction is not just only our mindset. Yeah. It's not only what we do. It's not only what we feel. It's not only what our destiny is. It's also our environment. Our environment helps us to create and attract the dreams that we have. And that is why Feng Shui was, till the 1950s, actually totally secluded to the few families, the wealthy families and families in power in China. And only after the 1950s, it started being spreading. And only since 1980s that there were some books in English out about it. And now this work is spreading. I mean, myself, I have more than 1 million online students that have taken at least one of my classes. So, it's the spreading of that information, because we all want to ultimately have a happy life for ourselves and our family. That's ultimately what we all desire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also, of course, why we want to co-create this micro society, so we can have this healthy life for ourselves and all the people we love. So yeah, that's so I'm so excited about implementing this new sprinkles of wisdom into the project. And so I think everybody got a lot of inspiration now from this interview, and I'm sure maybe on a later stage we can do a little bit more diving deeper in the subjects, especially when we're a stage further with the micro society. But for now, I want to thank you so much for this interview, and everybody can find the links in the video below in the post. And you can find, and of course, marydiamond.com, and you can also find the link to the Micro Society Network Talks and the newsletter. And happy to see you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Briony, and good luck with this amazing project, and to everybody that's going to be involved. Thank you.
Thank you.
This interview is part of the Societies for the Future Network project, where we imagine and co-create together the societies for the future. Share this interview with your friends and connect with like-minded pioneers and experts on the worldwide platform societiesforthefuture.org.